Hey everybody, Matt Michaels here on the DeFalco Files with the owner and creator of FSW, Future Stars of Wrestling here in Las Vegas, Mr. Joe DeFalco. And Joe, today we got MK with us. Uh, Joe, give me a little background about, for the listeners who don't know who MK is and how he came about into FSW's life, and then MK will get to you about your recollections as well.
Well, MK has been a manager for us in FSW, but more sporadically because he's a real busy guy. Every time Kiss is on tour, he has to go out with them, so that kind of limits. I even didn't see him, but I talked to him. The last concert ever was the End of the World tour with Kiss, and they played in Laughlin, and I was there, and so was MK, but he was busy smoozing with Gene and Paul that he come out to the lowlives that actually had to, sit in the seats.
Yeah, I was backstage.
Yes, and it was funny because I told the story that MK sent me the song list. He texted it to me beforehand. And the one thing I was surprised was like one of my favorite songs, Tears Are Falling, was not on the list. And then like the fifth song in, they broke into it. So I want to thank MK for telling Gene to sing the song for me. So that was very appreciative. But yeah, MK, he's really more than a manager. Like right now, he's my partner when it comes to some of the events that we're doing. And, the Mecca he got involved with from the beginning. I gave him an idea of what I was looking to do. And, he was behind it 100%. And then, he's always been a fan of the women's wrestling and saw what we're doing. And like, hey, we're trying to get this started. And, he got involved with that. We did one a few months back, and we're hoping to do one again next month and trying to do it in a more traditional method of once a month. We got good connections with the girls in OVW. There's that SoCal connection. There's Bryn Thorne in Arizona. And MK's also a guy who has the ability, like at the last show, to bring in a top name talent from Mexico, as well as Katarina. And, it makes it more of a super card of women's wrestling than just a random localized show.
Right. Definitely.
And he ran off too. So
so MK, what was your interest in wrestling that led you to the FSW path? How did you find what was going on out here in Vegas, and how did you want to become a part of it?
Well, I mean, what happened is I was, working my way through as ring announcer and then manager, and I was one of the owners in Destiny Wrestling in Albuquerque, and it was no secret that the top promotion in the West, if you will, was FSW. I mean, it was very apparent by what they were doing. And the thing that I was impressed with is, it's one thing to hotshot a show and just bring in a bunch of stars and say, hey, I'm a promoter. What I felt that Joe was doing that was really good is he was developing the local talent, and so he was creating talent. And I knew that my opportunity wasn't going to happen by, just bouncing around the indies at several shows. And I felt I had to make that step up. I was very fortunate that a few people in Utah were working with Joe already, the brother Smith, a gentleman by the name of Vig, that could vouch for me. And when the opportunity came to work at Super Toy Con, Joe gave me the opportunity, and I went with it. And it's been one of the best career moves I've ever made.
Joe, when someone kind of has the, gets in contact with you and says, hey, I want to do this with you, what are the things that you look for and listen for to see if it's something that is A, credible, and B, feasible to do?
Well, number one, I very rarely have brought somebody in because they sent in a link to a YouTube video.
Right.
Not saying that it's never happened, but the crew of people that have been added have generally been because one of my respected wrestlers recommended the person, who probably hit me up first and then said, hey, Remy Marcel said this. Like an example for Lacey Ryan, Big Vig, who he's talking about, and Manny Lemons, they had mentioned to me, and more Vig, about Lacey Ryan was coming to Vegas. She needed a place to train. She's really good, blah, 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 blah. She was coming to train, so it's a lot easier. She wasn't just some talent that I didn't know. But like the Santino brothers crew is very tight. From when it was Tito to bringing Che to bringing Douglas James to bringing Eli Everfly, you know, the list just went on and on. And when your track record is really, really good, then you're pretty secure in the fact that knowing that they know what we're trying to do. They're not going to send me some fucking shithead that doesn't know what he's doing. You know, it took a while because there's a guy now from Arizona. He's the real deal. He's a guy that I believe could be a champion in time in FSW, perfecting the craft, and that's Class. And right. I'd seen a picture, I'd seen a name, and didn't know really anything about it or him. We started doing the Future Stars Wrestling Initiative, where we were giving opportunities. My son kind of handled that in most cases. You know, we had guys from all over, you know, the country. Brian Idol in Florida. He, you know, was a trainer at the Evolve School. He was going to be in town because he was doing the United Wrestling show, and he was going to work there. So he was like, hey, he'd always been wanting to come out, said he can get flights. We got a guy that we had to cancel because in November we had the relapse, I guess you could say. His name's Tyson Maddox from Atlanta, Georgia. And then a month later, I'm watching him. Now he's been on a regular on AEW Dark. These guys see what we offered, and we let them know. You know, they're unknown guys. They may be awesome, but they're unknown guys. I'm not going to spend $500 on a flight from Georgia because this guy looks good. So right. They got their way out here. At that point, it was like, okay, now I'm going to look at his stuff. And it's like, oh, shit, this Tyson Maddox, he's a bad dude. You know, he's going to come out here for what little we pay and fly himself in. He decided he wanted to make a vacation spot. Well, if he was in New Mexico, if we were in New Mexico, maybe he wouldn't have came out. But we're in Las Vegas. MK came to town last week, and I never saw him. He just out, hangs out. Oh, yeah, I'm real busy. I got a lot of meetings. It's like, yeah, all these meetings are at the pool. It's amazing, you know. But the key is getting people that you trust to utilize for talent, because there's not a lot of out-of-state spots for what we're trying to do. But I'm never going to turn down an outstanding wrestler. Like we got Jordan Cruz out of the deal. We got Class out of the deal. You know, we brought back Eli Everfly. You know, a guy MK's worked a little with, who I love, Tito Escondido.
Yeah.
Working on bringing him back. You know, we need some good heels in the heavyweight division. You know, Tito Escondido and Shogun or Hero Lou would be a great match for guys like Hero and Shogun to work with an experienced, excellent wrestler that's as big as them. Because in the indie world, a lot of times, you know, Hero Lou's going to beat up a guy half his size. Well, it's harder to sell for that guy. But when you're having a big boy brawl like we're having on Saturday with Hammerstone, Cepha, Funny Bone, and Hero, man, that's going to be an amazing four-way right there. You know, and then the number one contendership on the line. So it's like, you know, Cepha's itching to get back at Graves. What would a Hammerstone and Graves, two friends, look like in a main event? You know, Hero's the up-and-comer. You know, future FSW champion. Is his time now? You know what I mean? And Funny Bone, been there, done that. He's done it all in FSW. He's got Ice Williams on his sights. and he's had opportunities, but he's never been the heavyweight champion. So, you know, that's what we want to do. As MK said, you know, we strive to bring in guys. And by doing the Mecca shows, you know, we've given opportunities to where Chris Bay and Douglas James got to work Phoenix. And Chris Bay got to work Brian Cage. And Chris Bay got to work John Morrison. And Morrison worked Cross. And Morrison got Chris Masters. And he got Kenny King. All that was an amazing way for these guys to develop in their young career. Not only wrestling them, but seeing what it's like to be in a match with a guy who has been in the major leagues and has wrestled all over the world. And
it's the total experience.
Yeah, expand on that, MK.
Well, I mean, you know, it's one thing when you really think about pro wrestling, what we do for the 10 to 12 minutes in front of a camera is so small to the total experience of being a pro wrestler. And so when someone who's younger in their career, you're not just going to learn how to wrestle and how to call a match or do something like that. It's how you conduct yourself as a professional. And when you spend the time with these gentlemen who've been there and done that before you learn by just watching how they treat people, how they carry themselves, and and the psychology that they bring to the ring. And at the very least, you have that opportunity at the end to just say, okay, you've seen what I can do. We've spent almost the entire day together and gone over everything. What can I do? What can I do different? And 99% of the time, these guys are very honest with you and will tell you what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, and what to work on. And so it's a total experience that you as an indie guy can get with someone that's been there before. It's more than just wrestling with someone.
Let me ask you regarding you being someone who has experience in a manager role, or being a ring announcer, everything but actually being full-time wrestler. What have you found would be some of the keys and some of the steps for people who are not in-ring talent necessarily to kind of focus on and work on to make themselves stand out a little bit so that they could grow in that aspect of the business?
Well, the number one thing is you need to be patient, because Rome wasn't built in a day. And unless you have that superhuman look, which not everybody has, you're going to have to work on finding a position in the company that fits. And not everybody can be in-ring talent. Not everybody can be a manager, ring announcer, wrestler that's in front of the camera. So you first of all need to prove to whoever you're working for that you're a good hand and that you're valuable. There are no invaluable positions in pro wrestling. And I mean that from the person that takes the coats and the ring attire to the back, to the top guy on the card, and everything in between. Everybody has a role, and your number one goal should be to be a good hand to that promotion. And opportunities will come to you that if you show up and are a good hand, those opportunities come to you. I can't tell you how many people I've met all across the business who started out as one thing and ended up as another. And it's all because they show up, keep their ears closed, ears open, their mouth shut, and do their job, that the opportunities come. For me, I was a ring announcer, and at one point in time, I was a guy in a suit. The dude that was supposed to play the bad guy attorney couldn't make the show. The promoter turned to me and said, "Here you go," and handed me the mic. Now, had I been bitching and moaning that I'm not getting the top bill, or whatever the case may be, I just showed up and did my job. Had I not done that and not been professional, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And so just be patient, and those opportunities will come to you. And even if they don't, you will have a hell of a good time at professional wrestling. And when you recognize that and recognize the small blessings that come along, you'll be a happier person, and eventually you'll get to where you want to go. But lastly, never lose sight of your goal. It'll come. It'll happen to you.
Joe, with that type of philosophy that MK has, does that make it easy for you to work with him on projects because he gets it, as opposed to, you know, some of the guys out there are oblivious and they just are essentially money marks who, you know, just want to see, hey, I want to hang out with Kevin Nash, so bring Kevin Nash in. Is that something that works best with you? You know, that MK has a great perspective on, having been, in the business.
Well, the thing with MK is he trusts what we've done. So he doesn't really interfere. Now, he'll make suggestions because I'll tell him, hey, what do you think? Hey, do you got somebody you like? Because he'll just allow me to do it my way and won't question anything. But the reason I want him involved is because he is part of it. Like, hey, what do you think? Like, he's tight with Sam Adonis, and we can get that done. I think Sam would be a valuable asset to FSW. So once things get rolling, hopefully, you know, that happens. The problem is with MK is, you know, he when I joke he's a busy guy, he is a busy guy. You know, weekends are when you run wrestling shows. Well, during football season, MK's an announcer for the University of Utah and does the radio stuff. So it might even be the TV stuff, but a lot of times it makes him unavailable. So it's kind of hard gearing storylines or involving him. Because the one thing I hate as a manager is, well, he's your manager this week, but we don't see him for 3 shows. Then he's your manager again. What kind of manager is he? But having him as a personality is a different thing. Like, so we kind of came up with what I was thinking about for, say, the women's show. You know, he ended up, you know, he managed Katarina, but the women's show are going to be more based around when it's good for him anyway. So it's okay because I would rather have him as a commissioner / host type thing, you know, but I have ideas in FSW for him where now his schedule's kind of opened up a little bit. And I got an idea that I think would work really well, that keeps him involved. And if he doesn't make a show, it's not the biggest deal. You know what I mean? So you work it on that. And in the Mecca, you know, all he really wants is, you know, hey, who you bringing in? If you're bringing in one of my guys, he's going to manage him. You know, he's going to be involved in that. You know, I give him a breakdown of, you know, who we're looking to bring in and, you know, who he suggests, because he's traveling a lot. You know, I don't travel at all. So he'll go. There's a guy we met at the taping. The guy did Beastman. And Beastman's this big 500-pound guy, entertaining enough. He came up with his own language, which I thought was brilliant, you know. And, you know, he tried to throw MK's name out like that was going to get him booked. It's like, yeah, it takes a lot more than just saying MK's name. You know, he better put you over for me to give you, you know, an opportunity just because you know the guy. But there's a guy he's seen that he might be willing to come to the West Coast. We can definitely find a spot for a guy like that. But because it's not only the main guys, it's also those, you know, needles in a haystack. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where they haven't really gotten a lot of name recognition yet. Hey, they might want to go to California. Hey, maybe they want to come to Vegas. Maybe they fly in. And now they get to be a part of the show. And the thing with MK, he's versatile enough, because I remember a couple of years ago, we did commentating together at the CAC.
Yeah.
And, you know, MK is going to be here Saturday. So we're going to try to reintroduce him. But there's a good possibility that he's also going to do some commentary. You know, we're just trying to figure out where it fits and what we can do that makes the most sense. But, you know, we talk about, I forgot who I called. It was like the MVP, because he was able to do so many things that an MK is very versatile. Not that I really would want to make him the ring announcer, because he's already a personality and character, but he is capable of doing that. It's kind of like when we don't have a ring announcer, I do it because I know what I need to say, and I think I sound good enough that I have an announcer's voice because I am an announcer.
Yeah.
So, you know, in this business, a lot of times you gotta, you gotta multitask. You gotta do, ring announcing and play-by-play, and you might have to work the door and also go yell at somebody who fucked up in the match or didn't do the promo the right way you wanted to. Like
Right.
you'll see me scoot after a match, let Jake talk, and run out behind the commentator's desk to the back to yap at something that I saw that 2 hours later I might forget about at that point. And it's fresh in my mind, like, hey, why'd you do this? Hey, why didn't you do that? Hey, why'd you sell for the guy 100 pounds less than you when it was supposed to be a 1-minute squash match? Blah, blah, blah. Things like that. So having MK around, makes things a little easier. He knows the business. He loves the business. That's the thing when you're talking about money marks who just want to bring in a Kevin Nash. I don't have a problem with that if it's a good guy. If somebody says, "Oh, Justin Credible wants $5,000," like Justin Credible, I'm not going to pay him that kind of money. Yeah. I'd bring him in, absolutely. But and one thing MK knows is I negotiate, and I don't really negotiate. I tell you what we afford. Now, especially for a guy that doesn't have a lot of name value. Obviously, I say, hey, Matt Hardy, I like your stuff, bro. I need you to come to my show. You do it for $500. Now, I kind of got to know what his rate is and then what we can do. And the idea with Matt was he was always a guy who would work for upfront money, but he knew Joe DeFalco was going to make him probably more money than he would have asked. Now, Matt loves doing seminars, so he made money on that. Matt loved meeting the fans, so I'd get him money from my card guy to sign autographs. Then we'd do a meet and greet, and then we would do the show. So even though Matt Meyer charged me $1,000 less than he normally would, he walked out of there with $1,500 more than he would have if he just asked for his price. So
that's important because I've learned from you, Joe, because a lot of times I use that technique when I'm doing other shows, and it's not just a technique; it's true. You're actually helping the person see the broader picture, because I can't tell you how many times someone doesn't want to negotiate on their rate, and after show I can say to them, had we done it my way, and I don't do it in a dick manner, but I do it in a nice, professional way. This is what you would have, what you would have done, and to a person, when that's happened every time, the next time they come back, no, let's do it your way. And it's something that is a powerful tool that I learned from you, Joe, that it works.
And the other thing is building a rapport. Like one of my favorite guys I saw the other day, Simon Gotch. And Simon worked a couple of, wasn't even a show. It was tapings called Match Madness. It's YouTube. Yeah. And they did like a 32-man bracket in a tournament. And Gotch worked, Santana Jackson, and he worked Sandra Moon. And he had some matches. Worked Lee Hardy. So he went from like this great wrestler to this crazy character to a woman's match. Yeah, you know what I mean? And the thing with Gotch was their taping was Wednesday and Thursday. And we kind of built the idea of doing an event on that Friday, trying to get people like EC3, like, hey, EC3 is dying to do a seminar, and it was like, well, you guys are already here. And even with Gotch, whose rate is very affordable to begin with. And it was like, hey, love to have you on Friday. I'd only be able to pay you this, which is, way less than what he normally asks for. But because we have a good relationship, he was willing to do it, but he had some issues, and he had a red eye that night. But because of past performance, and he goes around and says, I love working for Joe. He worked for me like 3 times. It isn't like I've given him money 100 times. But he was like, I took him out to lunch. Same thing with MK. He's in here. Hey, we go to Barley's and grab something to eat. Talk some business, whatever. It's like Lance Hoyt, same thing. Matt
Yeah.
Hardy. It's like all these guys we built relationships with that even if they haven't worked for me for 5 years, we're still in good standing. And despite what levels they might be at now compared to them, I could still talk to Brian Cage like he was working my shows for $100 back in the day.
Right.
Well, and this goes, and it goes, it's not just, it's not just, it's just how you should treat people. You know what I mean? It's not unique to pro wrestling. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. An asshole is always an asshole. So it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And so, sometimes no matter how well you treat someone, they're just those people. But I really feel that like number one, you can't be starstruck, and number two, just treat people as a professional the way they should be treated. And at the end of the day, they're going to realize that Joe is looking for the win-win, the quid pro quo. It's not a all me or all you. It's how do we come together and maximize our potential to make money, our potential.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Do you think, MK, that, like you were saying, some people are stuck on, I want my rate, and then when you flip and you show them, hey, if you would have done it this way, you would have made more. Do you think a lot of that comes out of the pure ego that a lot of performers have to have, and not necessarily in a bad way, but in a branding way, showing their confidence in themselves? Is it easy to talk to someone like that and negotiate with them, or does it become harder because they're just stuck on this idea that I'm this and this is what I deserve?
Honestly, I don't. It may be a case of egos in certain cases, but more often than not, for every one Joe DeFalco you have 100 guys that are trying to rip these guys off. Do you know what I mean? So,
Right.
So I really don't think it's necessarily an ego thing. I think it's that a lot of these guys have been burned so many times that they just get to the point where they're like, fuck it. I'm not playing any more games. I can't tell you how many times, just as a worker myself or as a manager, how many times I've been screwed over. And so, I think they just get to the point to where they're like, I'm done. I'm tired of hearing this. And they don't realize until it actually happens that guys like Joe, and by extension, guys like myself, really understand the business from the standpoint of, like I said, how do we come together and maximize our potential, creating that win-win situation to where on the front end, you may not get your rate, but at the end of the day, when you fly home, you'll have more money in your pocket, and so will I. And so I really don't think it's an ego thing. I think I honest to God believe that it's like I said, for every one Joe DeFalco, there's 1,000 guys out there trying to screw you.
Joe, how does someone who, let's say you got a young wrestler, say one of your guys, who doesn't have much experience, but let's say they get an opportunity through a friend or someone contacts them to go to Utah or Arizona or Texas, and they go and something happens where, let's say, they don't get paid out. Do you have people coming back to you with any types of stories like that? Or do the wrestlers who train through your system at FSW, do they learn those ropes to kind of look for red flags along the way, so hopefully they don't get burnt?
Well, when we talk stuff with the wrestlers, you see it all over Facebook. The biggest misconception, you get these people, oh, you never work for free. Oh, you never work for free. And that is the biggest misconception I've ever heard. It's like there's a lot of people that are on my show that do not get paid. Why do they not get paid? Well, they were a student paying $200 a month, and now they're paying $150, and now they're getting on the shows, and now they're paying $100. So
Right.
are they getting paid? Technically, they are. Their dues are 150, and they got $50 to work on the show, for example.
Right.
You know, am I wrestling some random, you know, show? I'm going to Phoenix, and I tell all my people, you know, there's been local shows where the group is kind of, you know, they're not affiliated with us in any way, but, you know, because of the fact that similar things, you know, shows like when you go wrestle down the street, you don't do that for free. See, you're a student of FSW. When you go work over there, I don't care if it's $15. They're trying to book you on the show. I understand you're young and you need experience, but when somebody contacts you about working on a show, they need to pay you. So
Yeah.
when they go to Arizona, they can't do it for free. It's a 5-hour ride. Now,
Right.
if Dave Marquez is running a show in Arizona for Championship Wrestling from Arizona, and it's going to be on TV, you need to know up front, am I getting anything? Am I not getting anything? It's your decision of what you should do. And it isn't anybody else to tell you that, oh, you shouldn't work for this, you shouldn't work for that. The reason why we can have a star-studded show on our events, we could do that all the time, but then none of our younger guys would wrestle. Well, if I got to pay the student who's paying $150 cash money after the show, then I might as well use Eli Everfly, who's going to cost me the same amount of money, and he's a guy who is far superior to the student I'm trying to get experience for. And guys, like I said, Tito Escondido, Eli Everfly, Brandon Gatson, these guys are awesome. And I could use them on every show. They don't charge me so much money that I can't use them. It isn't like, oh, I'm trying to save a few dollars. It's you come through the system of FSW and you paid your $250 a month and your $200 a month, and you became good enough to be on a show. I want to see those guys get booked on a show before I book them, because none of those guys would get booked anywhere because they are one of 1,000 people who just came from a wrestling school and said, hey, I trained at FSW. Now, that'll probably give them a step up because they could say, oh, Kenny King trained me, Sin Bodhi trained me, D'Lo Brown trained me, I trained with TJ Perkins, I trained with Davari. You know, those names might move you up a list, but they're going to say, yeah, we can throw you $30. Do you have any tape? Well, no, I got some practice matches. It's extremely difficult for somebody to get their first, second, third, fourth match, because in a lot of cases, those matches aren't very good anyway. But
you got to put in your time. You got to be an intern. It's like my shoot job or day job is I'm a structural engineer. We have people come from the universities all the time, and we're not paying them what I'm sure they think they're worth, but the opportunity to work at McNeil Engineering or another firm and say you've been there is huge. And that's what they're getting paid. And I know people make fun of the opportunity cost, but just look at the way the world works and look at the indie world, the way it works. But anyway, gentlemen, I'm sorry, I've got to run. I've got another engagement here, but I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. And if I can close with this is I really hope people, and I know they do, really appreciate what FSW has done, because they've given so many opportunities to so many different people. And Joe doesn't have to be the way he is. And he is this way because he does care and he is a good guy. And for real, I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Joe. And Joe, thanks for everything you've done for me. And I look forward to this weekend.
Sounds good, brother. I'll see you then.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Right. Thank you, MK, for joining us, and everyone out there listening. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.